Welcome back to another extraordinary tale of rebirth. Today, we're diving into the lush fields and surprising adventures of farming life in another world. It is the story of Hiraku, who remained bound to a hospital bed with a terminal illness until he finally passed away. Taking pity on the unfair life he lived, a god decides to reincarnate Hiraku in another world where he can live as he pleases. Wanting to try farming in this new life, he is bestowed with an all-in-one all-purpose farming tool that can transform into any useful implement he wishes. Hiraku is then transported to a vast untouched forest, far from the bustle of civilization. Here, he plans to build and farm everything from scratch, gradually developing the lifeless area into a bustling hub of life under his care. And hey, if you love seeing dreams take root and flourish, consider hitting that subscribe button. Together, let's dig into every moment of this heartwarming adventure. The tale begins as Hiraku wakes up early after a dream about dying in his own world. He greets everyone, surprised to be living a dream-like life. As a spirit, he meets the god of his world. This god says Hiraku had a hard life of 39 years, betrayed and sick with a deadly illness. The god, feeling responsible, offers him a second chance with a healthy body and asks if Hiraku has a wish. Hiraku, remembering a farming show he saw while ill, wishes to try farming in a quiet place. The god, not in charge of farming, calls the agriculture god for help. They grant Hiraku the power of an amazing farming tool. Hiraku finds himself in a forest, happy and healthy. Eager to start farming, he wonders about using the special tool, which then appears in his hand. As he digs effortlessly, he enjoys the soft soil, thinking it's perfect for vegetables. But he realizes he needs food and water first. He marks a big tree as a landmark for his camp and searches for a river, but is unable to find any source of water. Hiraku then decides to dig and find underground water. He summons his tool, which turns into a shovel, and soon after he starts digging, he ends up finding water. While preparing the ground around the tree, Hiraku looks for food but is unable to find anything. Hiraku decides to remove a smaller tree that might block his farming area. He changes his tool into an axe and chops the tree down in one swing, almost getting hit by it. He then turns the tool into a hatchet to cut the tree into pieces. As night falls, he tries to use his tool as a magnifying glass to start a fire, but it's too dark. With no way to make fire, he carves out a space in a large tree and shelters inside, making plates and cups. He notices two moons in the sky, realizing he's in another world. In the morning, Hiraku clears more ground and cuts down more trees. Feeling hungry, he encounters and kills a large monster rabbit with his tool. After eating, he builds a toilet with a dugout hole, ventilation, and a tree trunk seat, eventually constructing a small cabin around it. He starts preparing the land for farming but realizes he has no seeds. The next morning, Hiraku is surprised to find plants growing, possibly due to his tool's influence. He builds a wall and ditch to protect his crops from rabbits and other creatures. This takes a few days, during which he kills another rabbit. The plants grow quickly, and he hopes they are edible, not just decorative flowers. Lastly, he builds a hut but struggles to lift the wood, so he digs into the ground to create more vertical space. One day, Hiraku sees two rough-looking but non-aggressive dogs outside. He invites them in and feeds them some boar meat he had. Noticing that one dog is pregnant, he is surprised when she starts giving birth. He lets them stay in his house and spends the night in his tree hole. In the morning, he discovers she has given birth to 4 puppies. He celebrates by feeding them more meat. Expecting the dogs to leave, he is surprised when they choose to stay. Since they like the hut, Hiraku decides to build himself a new house. Hiraku successfully grows tomatoes and enjoys them. The dogs help Hiraku by hunting and safeguarding his farm. He names the adult dogs Kuro and Yuki, and names the puppies Kuroichi, Kuroni, Kurasan, and Kuroyan. Hiraku wants to build a storehouse, more vegetables, and many other things. Meanwhile, in a different location, a girl expresses her desire to cross the mountain. However, a man warns her it's dangerous, referring to it as the Forest of Death. He explains that the other side of the mountain is known for being full of monsters. The god who gave Hiraku a second life decides to check on him, feeling remorse for previously giving him a life of suffering. To his dismay, he discovers that he accidentally placed Hiraku in the dangerous Forest of Death, realizing another mistake. Meanwhile, Hiraku finds that when he desires to plant a specific type of plant, it magically begins to grow in his prepared soil. Grateful for this blessed life, he carves statues of the two gods as a token of thanks. He decides to plant fruits next, enjoying his time with the dogs, who have become essential companions. They also help him navigate the forest, leading him to discover a river. Hiraku plans to build a tunnel to channel water from the river to his farm, a 30-minute walk away. He decides to create a toilet near the river first. Realizing the potential of his magical tool, he transforms it into a wheelbarrow, which allows him to work tirelessly. As he expands his crop fields with various vegetables, including soybeans, Hiraku faces a new challenge. He lacks salt to season his food. As the weather turns colder and snow appears on the mountains, Haraku begins preparing for winter by gathering food and wood. During this time, he encounters a giant, friendly spider that crafts a handkerchief for him. The spider, which enjoys eating potatoes, decides to live in the large tree near Haraku's home. In exchange for potatoes, the spider uses animal pelts provided by Haraku to make him clothes, bedding, and curtains, enhancing his sense of civilization. Haraku names the spider Zabuton. Winter arrives, and Zabuton retreats into hibernation, leaving Haraku feeling a bit lonely. However, summer eventually returns, bringing changes. The puppies, now grown, leave but return with partners. Zabuton also reappears, along with its offspring. With more animals to feed, Haraku expands his crops. One day, Zabuton alerts Haraku to something in the forest. Hiro leads him to a young girl entangled in a spiderweb, naked and asking for help. Despite the dog's and spider's wariness, Haraku decides to assist her. Surprisingly, she bites his neck, transforming into a young woman. The dogs attack, and she reverts to a child form. The girl explains she isn't an enemy. She needed to bite him to regain strength, as using too much energy prevents her from maintaining her adult form and clothes. Haraku, feeling sympathetic, allows her to drink more of his blood so that she can recover. Haraku brings Ru Urashi, the vampire girl, to his home. She's amazed by his crop field in the forest and eager to try different vegetables. Ru shares that she's researching medicinal plants and had to flee from nobles who wanted to steal her work. She chose to hide in the dangerous forest, hoping to find new plants, but is surprised to see Haraku thriving there, taming beasts and using unique magic to create tools. Realizing the rarity of human contact, Haraku invites Ru to stay with him. Although she warns him about her pursuers and her vampire nature, Haraku insists, revealing his initial desire for solitude but now recognizing his need for companionship. Ru, with nowhere else to go, accepts his invitation, albeit with embarrassment. The next morning, Ru appears younger. She explains this form helps maintain boundaries, which Haraku respects. He shares his plan to grow sweet potatoes and refers to Ru as the first villager. When Kuro, the dog, disagrees, Haraku jokingly adjusts, calling her more like the 30th villager. Ru suggests growing medicinal herbs, but is concerned about finding the right seeds. Haraku confidently states he doesn't need seeds. Ru, using her magic, installs lights in the toilet and other areas, aiding Haraku in his homestead. When Haraku mentions his struggle to find salt, Ru points out a salt-rich layer in the soil, surprised he hadn't noticed it during his extensive digging. Haraku then checks his fruit garden, noting that fruits take longer to mature than vegetables. Suddenly, Zabuton, the spider, sounds an alarm. Haraku and Ru go to investigate and find another girl caught by the spiders and dogs. She apologizes for her earlier aggression and asks for help. After being released, she heals herself with magic and recognizes Ru, intending to capture her, but the dogs intervene. Back at Haraku's home, Ru explains her past encounter with this girl. The dogs, she notes, are impervious to magic and adept at dodging spells. The girl, blushing at Ru's introduction of Haraku as her husband, introduces herself as Tia, an angel. Ru clarifies that angels are a warrior race known more for strength than intellect. Tia reveals she's after Ru due to a bounty for causing damage in town with her explosive research. Ru admits her actions were excessive but blames the demanding nobles. Acknowledging Tia's strength, she explains her retreat into the forest. Tia is surprised by Ru's candidness, attributed to her realization of weakness after encountering the dogs. Ru invites Tia to stay with them, thinking she might enjoy it. Tia agrees, and Ru shows her around the crops. They spend the day harvesting vegetables, and Haraku offers some to Tia, who finds them delicious. A few days later, Tia expresses her desire to grow more strawberries. Haraku agrees but points out the challenge of keeping up with harvesting everything. Tia realizes the need for more help, and Haraku also notes that they might not be able to consume all the produce. Observing the growth of the dog family, with Kuroichi, Kuroni, Kurasan, and Kuroyan having puppies, Haraku foresees the need for more space. He decides to build a dog area next to the orchard. With so many new puppies, he struggles to name them all. Haraku notices some of Zabuton's children leaving, while others choose to stay. Tia then informs Haraku she'll be away for some time and flies off. A few days later, she returns with several high elf girls named Li, Leaf, Lekat, Lize, Lili, Lita, and Lise. They share a common La prefix in their names due to their familial relation. Li explains their tragic past. Their village in the north was destroyed in a human war, scattering their race. Ru suggests welcoming the elves, noting their talents. Li, the oldest at just over 400 years, and Lise, the youngest at over 300, seek a new home. Tia and Ru advocate for them, and Haraku agrees, provided they can coexist with the other inhabitants. When Ru introduces Zabuton and the dogs as their roommates, the shock causes the elf girls to faint. To accommodate the elves who wish to live together, Haraku undertakes the task of building a large house for them. He relies on the elves' expertise in construction, mostly assisting by digging and providing lumber. After 10 days, the house is completed, impressing both Rue and Tia. Haraku, feeling a bit envious, considers rebuilding his hut using the construction techniques he learned from the elves. The elves' house features a spacious living room for communal gatherings and dining, flanked by storage rooms. The second floor houses individual rooms for each elf. Haraku is surprised to learn that the elves eat meat and use fire, challenging his preconceived notions of elves as nature-bound, berry-eating beings who shun metal. Lee advises Haraku not to underestimate the forest, explaining that such a romanticized lifestyle would be impractical for survival. The elves plan to engage in mining and blacksmithing, intending to construct a furnace capable of melting iron. Haraku is taken aback, as he associates such activities with dwarves. However, the elves efficiently build a furnace and begin producing metal items. With the creation of a metal pan, Haraku feels a sense of advancement in his civilization and admires the elves' capabilities. Lee notes that there are things they haven't been able to do, like settle down and reproduce. Haraku acknowledges their success in settling down but chooses not to comment on reproduction, noticing the elves' meaningful smiles directed at him. The elves, noticing Haraku's wheat field, express their interest in making bread, revealing they have yeast. Haraku, excited by the idea, agrees, and they all enjoy the freshly baked bread together. This experience prompts Haraku to consider expanding the wheat field, but he suddenly questions the ownership of the land. Rue clarifies that while no one owns the forest, it's technically under the control of the demon lord. However, she reassures Haraku that since he built everything himself, the land effectively belongs to him. Meanwhile, Haraku is in his hut and makes a wooden cup. He realizes he haven't progressed his waterway in a while and wonders if the girls will help.